Welcome back, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris, and this is still Week 12 of the 2018 college football season. This is our third and final Big Ten matchup of the week. Without further ado, let's get started with the episode. This is the number 24. Finally, the Northwestern Wildcats are ranked in the AP Top 25. We'll see where they rank in the playoff Top 25 later today. But where it stands right now, they are 24th ranked in the AP, and that is what I'm using for these videos. They are 6-4, 6-1 in Big Ten play, going to Minneapolis to face the 5-5 Golden Gophers of Minnesota, 2-5 in Big Ten play. Again, I understand this is not a high-profile matchup. Please bear with me. Week 12 doesn't have many of those. But like the other two, I do think this can be a sneaky, good, interesting football game. Why do I say that? Looking at the schedule of these two teams, Northwestern, we have talked about before on the show. I won't elaborate too much on all of their games played, but they did beat Purdue in opening weekend, 31-27, in West Lafayette. But they did follow it up with 3 straight losses to Duke at 21-7 and all of these are in Evanston. Akron 39-34, another loss, a bad loss because Akron has not been a great team this year. I don't understand why Northwestern lost to them, 39-34, and they barely lost to the Michigan Wolverines, ranked 14th at the time, 20-17. But they did follow it up with a very impressive victory over the 20th ranked Michigan State Spartans at 29-19 in East Lansing, and they did beat Nebraska 34-31 week after that. They went on to defeat the Rutgers in Piscataway, New Jersey, 18-15. Defeated the 20th ranked Badgers of Wisconsin 31-17. Lost to in heartbreaking fashion to the 4th ranked Fighting Irish of Notre Dame 31-21 in a very good, well-fought game. That's why I have it as a green loss. If there is such a thing as a good loss, it was that game because it did give Northwestern confidence going into the game against Iowa, where they did win 14-10 in a very hard-fought, well-played game by both teams, and I will look at that game in Northwestern's marquee win. For Minnesota, we haven't seen them a whole lot this year, but I will talk about their victories slightly. New Mexico State, 48-10, not a great team, but they did only allow 10 points and scored 48, an impressive victory. Fresno State was ranked the last time I checked, and they did beat Fresno State when they were unranked, 21-14. Beat Miami of Ohio, 26-3, only give up 3 points, but only scored 26 against a comparatively weak opponent. At Maryland, 42-13, don't know why in the heck they lost in that game. Maryland's not a great team, and Minnesota looked horrible in that loss. Likewise, for the next game against Iowa, 48-31, another bad loss for the Golden Gophers. They did face number 3 Ohio State in Columbus, where they played well, but still lost 30-14. And they did lose to Nebraska in Lincoln, 53-28, back when Nebraska was still, I think, only had 1 win. And that was against an FCS opponent. Then they did go on to beat Indiana 38-31. I know Indiana's not a great team, but with Minnesota, not a great team themselves, I give that a good green solid win because this Minnesota team needed the win. Then at Illinois the week after that, lost 55-31. Don't understand how they get up 55 points to an Illinois Fighting Illini team that has struggled to score points this year in bunches, but that was a bad loss for Minnesota again. But they did follow it up with a resounding victory, 41-10, over those same Purdue Boilermakers that did dismantle the Buckeyes of Ohio State a few weeks before that, 49-20. An impressive victory for Minnesota, and that is the victory we'll be looking at for them in their recent marquee win. First of all, with Northwestern, that win last week against Iowa is, I believe, why they are ranked 23rd or 24th in the nation this week. Northwestern's offense did not play great, but they played well enough to win, acquiring 19 first downs, 36.8% on third down, 7 of 19, Not great, but not bad against a good Iowa defense. 184 yards on the ground, again, pretty good for an Iowa defense that does not give up many yards on the ground. But only had 122 yards passing, 15 of 30, one passing touchdown and 2 interceptions thrown. Not impressive fashion for Northwestern. They did acquire 306 yards against a stingy offense and a stingy defense in Iowa, With the fact that Northwestern didn't have a stellar offense, acquiring 306 yards isn't bad for them. Did commit 5 penalties for 40 yards. That is questionable for them because they have not committed many penalties this year. And they did turn the ball over twice, which is also a warning sign to me. But they did hold on to the ball for 31 minutes and 6 seconds versus Iowa's 28 minutes and 54 seconds. So either way, however you slice it, at least Northwestern was on the field a little bit longer on offense than Iowa. And Northwestern's defense did well to force Iowa to only 16 first downs, 23% on third down, 3 of 13. Only allowed 64 yards on the ground to Iowa, but did allow 269 yards through the air. Iowa's quarterbacks did throw for 27 of 41, 1 passing touchdown, 0 interceptions thrown. And Northwestern did give up 333 total yards to Iowa. Iowa only committed 3 penalties for 35 yards. But Northwestern did force 2 turnovers, which isn't bad. And they held Iowa, like I said, to 28 minutes, 54 seconds of time of possession. Looking at Minnesota, they completely dismantled that Purdue team, only allowing 14 first downs, no third down conversions. Purdue went 0 of 12 on third down. That is sheer dominance for Minnesota. Only allowing 88 rushing yards, 145 yards on the ground or through the air. That is a total of 233 yards Minnesota gave up. But Minnesota did give up 21 of 32 on passing, and Purdue's quarterbacks did throw 1 touchdown to 0 interceptions thrown. Purdue did commit 7 penalties for 81 yards, which did not help them in that game, and Minnesota did force 1 turnover. And they forced Purdue's defense to be on the field for 33 minutes and 13 seconds. You can do the math. You can see that Purdue only had the ball for 26 minutes and 47 seconds. Again, impressive for Minnesota. What did Minnesota do on offense? They did get 22 first downs. Only 4 of 11 on third down, though, which was 36.3%. Question mark moving forward into this game, considering, well, it's a question mark because you want to get at least 40% in a winning fashion, such as Minnesota had. But Minnesota did get 265 yards on the ground, but only 150 yards through the air. 11 of 20 passing collectively, not bad for Minnesota, but 1 passing touchdown and 1 interception thrown. Did acquire 415 yards of total offense and only committed 5 penalties, but 450 yards and 1 turnover. But Minnesota did hold on to the ball for 33 minutes and 13 seconds. Quite a resounding, dominant victory for Minnesota, and they desperately needed one going into the end of the year, where everyone is looking to get that coveted 6th win to become bowl eligible. Looking at the last 5 meetings, I forgot to change that again. I apologize. In 2017, Northwestern did dismantle this Minnesota Golden Gophers team 39-0. In 2016, Minnesota did defeat Northwestern 29-12. 2015, Northwestern shut out Minnesota again 27-0. 2014, Northwestern did lose to Minnesota 24-17. And in 2013, Minnesota did defeat Northwestern again 20-17. Historically speaking, these two teams have been pretty equal in this series. Offensive efficiency. Both teams have done lousy on offense. For Northwestern, have only held onto the ball for 30 minutes on average. 352.5 yards of total offense per game, but is 109th nationally for Northwestern. And they're only converting on 39.5% on third down. That is 67th nationally. Not horrible, but definitely not very good. And only not -1 on turnover margin. That is 74th nationally. That is horrible and a big cause for concern for Northwestern moving forward. For Minnesota, the only positive in this column is they have held onto the ball for 32 minutes per game on average. But total offense, 391.2 yards per game. That is 80th nationally. Only converted on 37.7% of the time on third down. That is 88th nationally. Both eye-popping stats for Minnesota. Not in a good way. And at -6 turnover margin, that is 110th nationally. That is why you've lost quite a few of the games you've lost, Minnesota. You have to turn that around moving forward, going up against a decent Northwestern team that does fight. Look at the team red zone. What red zone percentage for Minnesota? You are only getting inside the 20 2.6 times per game. That is 116th nationally. And when you get inside the 20, you're not doing much with it. At only 59.3% touchdown percentage and 78.1% scoring percentage overall inside the 20. That is 106th nationally. Northwestern, you get inside the 20, you need to score something. You can't sell for nothing. You have to score inside the 20. Minnesota, you do well getting to the 20, inside the 20 for the most part, at 4 trips per game. That is 36th nationally. And you do score touchdowns quite a bit of the time at 65.2%. Anytime you can score touchdowns inside the 20 more than 60% of the time, that's decent. But you really want to shoot more for 70 than 65, but not bad. But overall red zone scoring percentage, you are only at 80.4%. That is 92nd nationally. Neither of these two teams like to score inside the 20, which is a bizarre stat to me. Passing offense. What passing offense for either team? Both teams are pretty mediocre, if not lousy, in passing. For Northwestern, you're only getting 58.8% completion percentage. That is 80th nationally. Got to improve that accuracy percentage. Passing per game, 250.4. That is 50th nationally. Not horrible, obviously, but definitely not great, and definitely want to improve that going forward, considering you don't run very well either, which we'll look at in a minute. Sacks allowed per game, you're allowing Clayton Thorson to be knocked on his rear end 2.6 times per game. That is 99th nationally, and you have thrown 13 interceptions, averaging more than 1 per game. That is another cause for concern stat moving forward. For Minnesota, you are only completing 54.4% of your passes. That's 109th nationally. I understand you've had many injuries at the quarterback position, but for God's sakes, you've got to get better accuracy out of the quarterbacks that you have. Passing per game only at 226.1 yards per game. That is 73rd nationally. That is quite horrible. You want to at least get above 250 to give yourself a chance. And you've also allowed 2.2 sacks per game. That is 63rd nationally. I meant to make those sacks in yellow, but either way, it's not a great stat regardless. And you've also allowed 12 passes to be intercepted. That's averaging more than 1 per game. That's another statistic that is cause for concern moving forward. Team rushing. What rushing statistics for either team? Northwestern is only gaining 102.1 yards per game on the ground. That is 124th nationally. And you're not bad as far as rushing yards allowed. Northwestern at 135.3 yards per game. That is 36th nationally. Not great, but you want to definitely improve that moving forward. But Minnesota, you aren't much better on running the ball yourselves, 165.1 yards per game. That is 72nd nationally. And you are giving up 178.3 yards per game. That's 82nd nationally. Minnesota, you're giving up more yards on the ground than you're gaining. That is not a good ratio moving forward, and that is another reason why you're losing some of these games. You're getting beaten up front, which you can't allow that to happen in order to beat some of these tougher Big Ten opponents. Passing defensive efficiency. Neither team is good at defending the pass, and that is an understatement. Northwestern is giving up 63.4% of the passes completed, and that is 100th nationally. Sacks per game, Northwestern only getting to the quarterback 1.3 times per game, to the 119th nationally. Have to do a better job of that. You're only acquiring 6 interceptions per game, that is 87th nationally. Again, Northwestern, you need to do a better job of getting sacks, and those sacks can also add to the interceptions you gain. You hit the quarterback, hit them hard enough, hit them enough, they're going to make mistakes, and you can capitalize it in the secondary. And passing yards allowed per game, 237.8 per game, that is 78th nationally. As again, all of those are causes for concern moving forward, and that contributed directly to why you lost to Notre Dame and Michigan. For Minnesota, you don't do much better. In fact, you do worse in allowing completions at 65.1% this year. That is 117th nationally. Sacks per game, not much better. You are getting 1.8 per game. That is 84th nationally. Again, you need to hit the quarterback more often in order to help the next stat, which is your interceptions, gain at only 8. That is 59th nationally. Hit the quarterback more often, you can get more interceptions. It's just the way it works. But you have to hit the quarterbacks, make them uncomfortable, and force them into making mistakes and capitalize on those mistakes. Passing yards allowed, not bad for Minnesota at 226.5 yards per game. That is 61st nationally. Not as bad as 237.8 allowed for Northwestern, but still a caution moving forward for Minnesota. You've got to find some sort of defense somewhere, and you haven't found it yet this year, Minnesota. At least statistically speaking. Overall total defensive efficiency, Northwestern not bad, but you do need to gain more turnovers. You only gained 14 this year. That is 70th nationally. Your total defense, 373.1 yards per game given up. That is 50th nationally. Not horrible, but you definitely want to get that number down a little bit as you're playing some of the tougher offenses moving forward, especially since you will be facing either Michigan or Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. You need to improve that total defense. But third down percentage allowed per game at only 32.9%. That is 23rd nationally. That is one of the few bright spots for Northwestern statistically. For Minnesota, not bad, only at gaining 16 turnovers per game, but it's 52nd nationally. You want to improve that number a little bit in this game to give your offense a short field, considering your offense isn't great on average anyway overall. Total defense, quite lousy at 44.8 yards per game given up. That is 69th nationally. Not a good stat. And you are giving up 38.4% third down conversions. That is 60th nationally. Again, you've got to get that number down in order to compete with some of the big boys in the Big Ten. Offensive scoring efficiency. What offensive scoring efficiency? Both teams are pretty lousy in that department. Northwestern, you're only scoring 23.6 points per game. That is 93rd nationally. In the first quarter, you do better in the fourth, but you're still only gaining 5.9 points per first quarter. That is 65th nationally. You're scoring more in the fourth quarter, but you need to score more in the fourth quarter, and you're still only scoring 6.6 points in the fourth, which is 70th nationally. For Minnesota, you do a little bit better overall scoring, but not much better at 29.1 points per game. That is 55th nationally. For Minnesota, in the first quarter for each game, you're scoring only on average 5.2 points per game. That is 79th nationally. In the fourth, you do even worse than Northwestern at 6.2 points scored in the fourth quarter. That is 81st nationally. Guys, you got to score some points. That's how you win games, just in case you forgot. Both these teams are lousy overall in first, fourth, and overall scoring. Got to do a better job of that moving forward for both teams. Defensive scoring, Northwestern does quite well at only giving up 23 points overall per game, but it's 33rd nationally. In the first quarter, Northwestern, you do excellent at only allowing 3.8 points per first quarter. That is 24th nationally. In the fourth, you're only giving up 5.1 1 points. That is 22nd nationally. Minnesota, you've got to do a better job stopping these teams in the first, fourth, and overall in the games. You're giving up 29.6 points per game. That is 76 nationally. You're giving up on average 8.2 points in the first quarter per game. That is 99th nationally. And you're giving up 9 points on average in the fourth per game, which is 112th nationally. Minnesota, you're in shambles as far as your defense goes, stopping opponents from scoring. Self-imposed errors. Both teams do well at not committing too many penalties. For Northwestern, you've only committed 3.1 on average per game. That is first. And penalty yards per game, you're only allowing 28.5 of those. Very impressive. But where you struggle, Northwestern, is turnovers lost at 15. That is 68th nationally. Definitely cause for concern. For Minnesota, you're only committing 4.2 penalties per game. That is 7th nationally. And you're only allowing 42.4 penalty yards per game. Again, none of those stats are bad. They're quite excellent. But where you struggle, you've given up 22 turnovers this year. That is 2 per game, just over 2 per game. In fact, that is 120th nationally. Neat little tidbits. I couldn't find a whole lot about these two opponents, except they did play each other for the first time in 1892, where Minnesota did win that matchup in Minneapolis 16-0. And Minnesota does hold the advantage in this series at 53, 35, and 5 ties. Northwestern, as we've talked about before on the show, has not been great historically in football. They are 542 wins, 664 losses, and 44 ties. Minnesota hasn't done bad in football over the years. They are at 693 wins, 521 losses, and also 44 ties. Keys to the game for both teams. Northwestern has to play a clean game and capitalize on Minnesota's mistakes. Must force turnovers. Northwestern, you can't sell for 3 points inside the 20. You have to score 6 or force Minnesota into a long field if you face fourth down inside the 20. I have said this twice before, and I've said it again here, because it is important. To reverse the field, you have to go for it inside the 20 on average. Considering you're not a great offense and you don't have a great defense statistically, and you're going up against a lousy offense, you want to keep that offense going on a long field. Northwestern, you give up the ball far too many times this year. You can't turn the ball over against a hungry, dangerous, desperate team to get their 6th win. You cannot beat yourselves. You've won the West, but don't lose your focus and play hard regardless of if this game may seem meaningless. Northwestern, you've got pride, and don't you want to get some more rank moving into that game? You could sneak into a New Year's Six bowl if you can win your next 2. Well, next 3. Especially if you win the Big Ten Championship, you're going to get into a New Year's Six bowl. But you got to play for pride here, and you got to play tough and determined like you have throughout the year, Northwestern. Minnesota, you have to start aggressive with a long pass and also test Northwestern's defense with a steady dose of runs out around the outside. You're not strong enough up front to run inside the numbers, but you can get outside and outrun Northwestern. You must also try and confuse a Northwestern defense that can give up too many yards through the air with quick and short passes. And you also need to play a clean game, Minnesota. You turn the ball over far too much. You can't afford to do that against this team. You cannot beat yourselves. Northwestern will take advantage of it, and they will crush you. You cannot beat yourselves. You have to play a clean game. Northwestern doesn't have much left to play for. Use that to your advantage since you're still playing for bowl eligibility and you're at home. Wouldn't it be great to get that 6th win in front of your home crowd? They've earned it. They deserve it. You've earned it. You deserve it. You played an excellent this year, considering you don't have much talent, but you're tough, you're gritty, and you're determined, just like the team you're playing against. I love both of these teams. I hate to pick one because I love both of these teams equally. They're both scrappers, they're both fighters, and they've both gotten their tails beat off or knocked off, but have still come back. And Minnesota is still 5-5, and Northwestern is 6-4. Both these teams have had a good year. But who to pick? Like I said, Northwestern doesn't have much to play for. Minnesota has a lot to play for still. They can sneak into a bowl game with a win this week. This is their best chance to get that win. I believe PJ Fleck knows that. I believe Minnesota knows that. And I do believe Minnesota will come out of the gates firing hot and heavy. Both teams will start to get tired in the fourth quarter. But I do believe Minnesota will do enough to win and to beat a Northwestern team that I really can't believe Northwestern is going to be that fired up to play this game, because I do believe they're going to be thinking now until it happens, the Big Ten championship game. I think Northwestern will lose their focus and will lose to a Minnesota team that has been playing with some fire as of late. I know the stats don't show it, but I think this Northwestern team is focused, they're determined, they're driven, and they're well coached. But so is Northwestern. But like I said, I think Northwestern lost a little bit of that hunger when they beat Iowa last week and clinched the Big Ten West. I think Minnesota can and will capitalize on that, and I think they're going to win in a huge upset in Minneapolis. Fans will storm the field because their team will be bowl eligible, and Northwestern will just be scratching their heads saying, boy, we should have focused more for this game. That is it for my Big Ten games this week. I will be having my +1 game soon. I'm not going to unveil the matchup yet because I haven't quite decided on who it's going to be. It's down to 2 or 3 games, but I will be recording that in the next couple of days, and you'll find out then. But until next time, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate the views and love. Please like, share with your friends, subscribe if you do like my content. Please hit the thumbs up telling me how well I'm doing. Or if you don't like my content, you don't like my voice, you don't like my picks, whatever the case may be, please hit that thumbs down button and let me know why you don't like my content so I can enhance your viewing experience. Thank you again for stopping by, and until next week, guys and gals, enjoy the games.